What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update. Arne Slot out the door. He has signed that contract with Feyenoord, confirmed today. But let's talk about some other contenders for the new Spurs manager job. And starting off with Celtic's Ange Postecoglu. Dan Kilpatrick says that Postecoglu has emerged as a serious contender for the Tottenham job. And Fabrizio Romano says that Ange Postecoglu is one of the concrete names on the Tottenham managerial list.
Yeah, so it seems as though he seems to be the new flavour of the month now, Postecoglu, although apparently...
Flavour of the month? Flavour of the day.
Flavour of the day, yeah, you should probably say that. Flavour of the hour,
yeah.
How things are going with the Tottenham managerial search. Apparently he has said today he's not talking about next season right now. He's focusing on winning the treble with Celtic. And to be fair, I've been looking at, seeing a few more analysis of how Postecoglu plays.
You're buying into him, aren't you?
Yeah, come on. I'm part of the Angie army now. Come on, bring in Postecoglu. Look, at this point in time, with all our top options drying up very, very quickly, at this moment, he does seem to be a manager who will play progressive football. He also does kind of set up in a very offensive way. He builds up with modern teams do, with a two in the at the back, with a front five as well. Very, very wide, aggressive, pressing philosophy as well. So it is one which could excite me, but it's just obviously the question marks only coming from Celtic, not really managing Europe much apart from that. Didn't really perform well in the Champions League either with Celtic, in terms of didn't ever look like getting out the group. So there are definitely question marks, but I think there are reasons to be positive about a potential Postecoglu appointment if it does get through. But he doesn't definitely represent a young, progressive, hungry manager.
But I think his footballing philosophy is very similar to the likes of Arne Slot, Pep Guardiola, of that kind of ilk. And even Pep Guardiola has gone on record to say that he is impressed by coaches like Ange Postecoglu, or Postecoglu specifically, when they came head to head in I know it was only a friendly match, but it was when he was managing in the J League. I think it was for Yokohama against Man City in a pre-season, and Pep Guardiola was full of praise for Postecoglu at that point. But there's much difference going and managing the J League and getting plaudits from Pep Guardiola than coming and doing it week in, week out in the Premier League. I mean, it's very different, isn't it?
It's very different, 100%. And he's going to come up against many managers as well with similar philosophies all of a sudden. Klopp's changing his philosophy as well, having Trent in central midfield as opposed to out wide. So he's kind of also adjusting his philosophy. We've got Pep, you've got Arteta, you've got Eddie Howe doing really well at Newcastle. It's very different when you're at Celtic, where you're going to be ahead of the game. You're going to have the best players and probably the most progressive tactics as well when you're playing in the Scottish League. So it's a different kettle of fish. He hasn't shown he can maybe go toe-to-toe with all these managers just yet, but in terms of the football he'll be playing, at least that's a positive.
Yeah, and it'll be a massive, massive step up to where he's ever been in his career. It really will be. So we'll have to see how this one plays out. But let's talk about some other managers on the list, and that is Graham Potter. Sammy Mockbell says that Potter has now emerged as an option for Tottenham.
Doesn't surprise me, because they were looking at him not so long ago where they didn't want to pay the release clause for Brighton, which Chelsea ended up paying around 20 million for. So
I thought the case was that Potter just didn't want to come and work under Daniel Levy at that time. He didn't want to leave Brighton for Tottenham.
I think it was a bit of both. I don't think Spurs wanted to pay the 20 million. And yeah, I think Potter as well had reservations when he was very settled at Brighton, and he was fair to have them, because look at what happened at Chelsea, to be fair, moving from that situation and being booed out the door. I think he's an underrated manager because he's fair. He did fail badly at Chelsea, but I do think it would have been impossible for a lot of good managers to have succeeded in that kind of scenario and that kind of environment, in my opinion. Having that many players in as part of a squad and trying to figure all that out was going to be very, very challenging. And it proved too much for him, to be fair, and that is a blot on his copybook. But for me, I still admire the work he's done at Brighton and he's done his previous clubs. I did want him 2 years ago when we appointed Nuno. I was a big fan of his, and nothing much has changed. I do think actually that he's shown while at Brighton, tactically he's a very astute manager, but I guess the question mark is, does he have that ability to make the step up to a top club? Based on the Chelsea job, many people would say no, but I think he's probably worth another crack, although you'd probably want to see him at another Premier League club first before like he comes to Tottenham. But I wouldn't be too mad at a Potter appointment as much as people would poo it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Potter, to be honest. I mean, I like the work he did at Brighton. I did think he did good work there, but his stint at Chelsea has completely turned me off him, to be honest. And when you're talking about graveyards and for managers, Chelsea is one of them, Tottenham is another. So I just can't see it working at Tottenham, and I feel like the fan base will get on his back very soon after it not going right. And whether that's right or wrong, probably wrong, but I just can't see it working at Tottenham. And I just feel like one sign of trouble, the fans are just going to get completely on his back and it'll be a recipe for disaster. So
I guess the main negative against Potter, in my opinion, is another ex-Chelsea manager.
Yeah.
There'll be 3 of the last 4 and the last 2 haven't worked out. But I do think it represents a different kind of ex-Chelsea manager though.
Yeah, well, again, we'll have to see how this one plays out, but he wouldn't be number 1 on my list. I mean, if it's between Potter and Postecoglu, I might just side with Postecoglu, over Potter, even though like Potter does have that more Premier League experience and he has done it at a high level. I just a bit more excited about the prospect of Postecoglu than Graham Potter. But let's move on, and this is the name that everyone obviously wants, but probably very unlikely, is Julian Nagelsmann. Gary Jacobs says that Tottenham could try and resume talks again with Julian Nagelsmann, and Sammy Mockbell says that sources on Thursday indicated that Tottenham retain a tentative interest in Julian Nagelsmann.
I don't know why we wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't we try and resume the talks with him? Obviously, right now, he's not interested because of the state we're in. But once we do get things in place, why can't we go back in for him? It doesn't make any sense to me why the door is completely slammed shut on that. It shouldn't be.
I know, and like when you're talking about dragging the club into one direction, in my opinion, you go into talks with Nagelsmann, you listen exactly what he needs to take this club forward, and you listen, because a manager like Julian Nagelsmann does not come around every day, and especially for Tottenham, when managers are batting us away left, right and centre. We've been called a graveyard for managers. If Julian Nagelsmann has any sort of feeling that he can do a job at Tottenham, you listen to exactly what he wants to do and you try and fulfil that.
Exactly. I guess on just to push back on that, I guess people said the same about Conte, and I guess we didn't listen.
That's the point.
Exactly with Conte, but people said you just do whatever he says, and then we did bring him in, and it didn't. I guess we didn't do exactly what he says, but it didn't quite work with that. I guess it's about control of the club. Do the club want to retain how much the control the club want to retain compared to how much Nagelsmann wants? And because we know this club aren't one to give up too much control.
That's the problem at this football club. And when you see every manager comes in and every manager fails, and every manager fails for pretty much the same reason, when are they going to get it in their heads that they need to listen to a manager? They need to give a manager everything that they need to do to succeed in a job, and that never has happened ever. So it's very frustrating. But let's move on to Ruben Amorim. And Romano says that sources believe Ruben Amorim will be staying in Lisbon, at least for next season. Yeah,
and I think obviously he's down the pecking order anyway for Tottenham, and as well when you consider that it's going to take a similar fee to what it would have taken to get on this like final to get Amorim out of Sporting. If you're not going to pay for Slot, you're not going to pay for Amorim, are you? So it makes sense that we're probably going to not even enter talks and try and get him because of the fee.
Yeah, and they're talking about a bigger fee for Amorim than it will be for Slot. So if they balked at the price for Slot, the Amorim is just an absolute pipe dream, so that's not happening, and he is staying in Lisbon. But let's move on. Let's talk about Harry Kane. Samuel Luckhurst, very reliable Manchester United journalist, says that Man United will operate under the assumption that Tottenham will not sell Harry Kane. Daniel Levy has made it clear that he has no intention of letting the England captain go to another club in the Premier League.
I think that's probably a fair assumption because we are going to be hard to deal with. We're not going to basically accept their first offer, are we? We're going to drag it out.
Or second, third, fourth, or fifth.
Exactly. So this is going to be one, if they're seriously interested in him, it's going to be, they have to be prepared to be dragged out throughout the whole summer. And maybe, if depends on what we do during the window, maybe if we can get some strikers in, maybe we'll let him go on deadline day or something, like we've done previously with Bale and Berbatov and people like that. So I think it's probably a fair assumption for United to just say, look, they're probably not selling. Let's move on and try and get other targets. Maybe we'll revisit it later in the window if things haven't moved.
Yeah, I've said it many a time. I'm a firm believer that Harry Kane will be here next season, and he will be weaning down his contract with the 1 year to go, and most likely will leave on a free at the end of next season, which will be hard for everyone to take. But let's talk about some other Spurs players now. First up, Ben Davies, the Football Insider, claiming that Tottenham will listen to offers of £15 million for defender Ben Davies this summer, regardless of the identity of the new manager.
Who's that, Footy Insider?
Yeah.
It's not the best source, is it? But we'll see. Look, Davis has been a player who every manager especially since Pochettino's left, has seemed to rely on, to be fair. So he has been like a trusted member of the team, but we know that at the end of the day, he's now 30 years of age. He's obviously not going to get any better. He's one of those players that at best he'll give you a 7 out of 10, but occasionally he'll drop a 5 or a 4 out of 10. But he'll usually stay at like a 6. That would be his minimum level of performance, really. And Spurs just at the end of the day need a better level of player. He's all right to be a squad player, but I think 15 million, I think it makes sense to move him on and try and get a younger version of someone like Ben Davies, essentially, to move on with the team, because I just don't like especially if we're moving to a back four next season, I don't see a place for him.
Yeah, I see a place for him in the squad, on the bench, if we need players to come on and fill the gaps with injuries and stuff like that. But it's up to Ben Davies if he wants to spend the last couple of years of his top years doing that. And I think that, I wouldn't have any problem selling him. I wouldn't have any problems keeping him too much, but I wouldn't want to offer him a new contract or anything. But he is on quite a long contract, isn't he? Because he only signed one a year or two ago.
Yeah, he did sign one, didn't he? Was under Conte?
I'm not sure if it was under Conte or Jose. I can't remember. But he did sign one recently. I think he might have about 3 years left or something like that. So I wouldn't want to see him here till the end of the contract. So either sell him this summer or sell him next summer. But he's got to go at some point. He's been here for so long.
Yeah, I know. And it's just, he's not going to get any better. So what's the point?
Yeah. Let's talk about Japhet Tanganga now. German journalist Dominic Schneider saying that Frankfurt, Bayer Leverkusen, Union Berlin and Stuttgart have all asked about signing Japhet Tanganga. Spurs are holding out for €13.8 million.
13, that's about, £10 million? I think we'd be lucky to get it, to be honest, based on his level of performance that he's shown at Tottenham for the past few years. Yes, he did burst onto the scene and was playing quite well, and he seemed like this could be a defender for us for a while, but hasn't really panned out like that. And I think for his own development, he just needs somewhere where his regular game time so he can actually grow as a player. He's stagnating at Tottenham. I think any fee would be worth it at this point for him.
Yeah, 5 to 10 million I think we could get for. I mean, look, at the end of the day, he's 24 years of age, and we've seen players, young English players, go to Germany and really kickstart their career. Maybe not at that age, but maybe with Tanganga. I do believe that Tanganga does have quality, but I just don't feel that there's room here for him at Tottenham anymore, to be honest. And he never gets a look in, whichever manager it is. So it's pretty much best for him to go, to be honest.
At his age, when you're 24, he broke into the Spurs squad at like 19, I think, wasn't it? Under Mourinho, what must have been 20, 19 or 20.
Yeah, I think it was 2021, yeah.
When you're 24, you have to at least expect to be like a regular first team player. If you're still like 24 years old and getting 5-10 minutes off the bench and one start here and there, that's no way to be playing your career. So he just has to move on. Yeah. And it's not looking like that's going to change. It's not like we're all of a sudden going to make him a first team player next season either.
And he's always been held up back by injuries anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's not even just a quality thing, it's also how available he is.
Yeah, it's also true.
Last but not least, let's talk about Manor Solomon. This is an interesting one. This is reports coming out of Israel claiming that Tottenham are in advanced negotiation to sign Manor Solomon as a free agent in the summer. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but he's been on loan from Shakhtar to Fulham for this year. But I'm not sure why he'd be a free agent.
I think because they had that clause for Ukrainian players that they can leave, I think, something like that on a free.
Because of the war.
Yeah, because of the war. I don't buy this for a second. I don't think we're signing Manor Solomon on a free. I don't think we're even thinking about Manor Solomon on a free. I know he did quite well for a period. It was
like a 5-game period, wasn't it?
Well, because he was a bit unlucky, to be fair to him, because he started the season, he got a big injury right at the beginning of the season, ruled out for like 8 months or something. He then came back into the team after a big injury and then scored like 4 or 5 games in a row and was playing really well.
It was 5, yeah.
He hasn't kind of kept that up.
Great goals as well.
What brilliant goals. He's clearly good, but what I've seen is he lost his place in the team because he's not like what I was actually quite focused on Solomon because I was quite interested in how he was developing, and I saw like he's very much a player of individual ability, but not much of a team play. He's not very good at linking the play. He's not very good at keeping the ball. He loses the ball very often. But what he is good at is like when he has space, he can cut in. He's got a very good shot. But I think Spurs at their level, they're looking for a higher quality level of player than Manor Solomon right now. I don't think we're just looking for a player who's like decent at all these aspects. We're looking for a younger player who can be more of a team player, I think, than Manor Solomon.
23 years of age. He's not old.
He's not old, but he's not like, he's not old.
At 23 years of age, do you not think like a manager can come in and coach that teamwork into his game?
I just think you can get better than him, Manor Solomon. I've seen like good ability. Don't get me wrong. I have seen good ability. I haven't seen any star quality, like in terms of like his discipline within a game, like his ability to follow instructions. I think it's why he keeps getting dropped, because he's better than some of the other wingers quality-wise than that Fulham have. But he lost his place because he can't. He's just too unreliable on the ball.
But again, it is his first year in Premier League football, coming from the Ukrainian league. Before that, he was in the Israeli league. So maybe a bit more experience can do in the world of good, and he maybe can and use that quality that you did see and harness it and make himself better with better coaching.
Yeah, potentially, but I think you're taking a gamble. You have to be sure that you want him as part of your first team.
It's a free transfer at the end of the day.
Yeah, but even so, you got to think of it as he's taking a space in the squad. So you're buying him, and that means that's your winger place filled for that season. Are you going to put your trust in him? And I just don't right now.
Fair enough. But that is our Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any thoughts regarding any of the news stories we brought to you today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on, you